Hello, everyone. Let me take you into a room that I once walked into. It was called the collaboration sink. The invite had it all, the right words, alignment, team strategy, openness. But the moment the meeting started, I felt it. Not in the slides, not in the words that were spoken in the room, but in the energy of the room. And the leader particularly asked a question that changed entirely the energy in the room. He was very polite, but that sharpness that his words had underneath was really something that we all couldn't accept. He asked the question, do you think this approach is mature enough? And that's where everyone froze. Not because it was a bad question, but because it was not really a question at all. It felt more like that coded language that the leader is throwing on all of us. It was that power move in disguise. And what really happened was that in that next 5 minutes, everybody went silence. Everybody started only nodding. There were no real disagreements. There were no real alignment because of it. And hence, no real collaboration that happened. And I walked out thinking, this meeting was nothing about collaboration. It was more like that caution meeting that happened, and nobody said it out loud, but everyone in the room felt it really deep. And this is a part of leadership nobody really talks about. We all call a meeting certain words, but what really happens? Nothing in that meeting is actually related to it. And that, my friends, is that unspoken energy in the leadership. And that translates into that unspoken energy in the entire room. So, in every room that you walk into, you can see that your words as leaders carry data. But what more is interesting is that your presence carries energy, and the energy always speaks before you would start speaking through words. And that unspoken energy is what is very important. And neuroscience tells that humans process non-verbal cues. When I say non-verbal cues, it's the body language, the way you're sitting, your facial expressions, the hand gestures, all of that. So humans process non-verbal cues in 200 milliseconds. That's faster than anybody could blink. And mirror neurons fire and bodies start responding, and suddenly people are not reacting to your words, they are reacting to your emotional frequency. And we've already spoken about how a communication happens. The communication is 7% verbal, the words that we speak, and 38% the tone, the voice tone and tonality, and 55 percentage is body language. What does that mean? It means 93 percentage of the communication is nonverbal. We've all seen it, right? The leaders who say, hey, I'm open to feedback with crossed arms and then the clenched jaw. The manager who says it's all fine, but their silence is deafening. So, this isn't about the leadership skill gap that I would say. This is more that energetic awareness gap that leaders have today. And here's a question that I want to offer you today. One that most leadership KPIs ignore. What does it feel to be led by you? What does it feel like to be led by you? This is a question that I wanted to ask. Not how smart you are with your decisions, not how impressive is your curriculum vitae, but do people breathe easier around you? Do they feel seen? Do they feel heard even when they disagree? And how do they feel when they walk away? Do they feel brave or do they feel shut down? And that, my friends, is a real legacy of leadership. Not in the meetings that we lead, but that emotional footprint that we leave on people, the emotional aftertaste that we leave on people once we speak something. And that's what matters the most. Now, most people are promoted for the outcomes, right? The kind of business that we bring in, the kind of revenue that we have made as leaders. But what's important is that the leaders are remembered for their presence. And in today's world of AI automation, the presence is your last moat. Your energetic awareness is your IP. Because let's face this, AI can write reports, AI can write emails, but what AI can't do is that AI can't make someone feel safe in your presence. And that is what makes you the irreplaceable leader. And all of us want to be that irreplaceable leader, right? So now let's move into the core of today's session. If energy is your invisible signature, then how do you lead with a kind of energy that builds safety and not the fear? Now, let's begin talking about one of the most important KPI, which is missing from the leadership dashboards that's ongoing in the organizations. But this missing KPI is the one which is deeply felt in every interaction with the leader. Now, let's talk about it. The missing KPI. What if we measured leadership by how safe people feel in your presence? What if we measure leadership by the safety net that we provide for our team members? Now, let's imagine for a second that your company dashboard has an added new column right next to your project milestones, OKRs, profitability goals, and the new column is titled the Energetic Safety Score. This particular energetic safety score doesn't measure your revenue, doesn't count the number of emails that you have answered in a day, or it doesn't even track your efficiency. This particular column simply asks you how safe do people feel when you walk into the room? How open are your team members ready to speak when you are in charge of that meeting? Do they bring their boldest ideas to the meetings or the emails? Or they're bringing that safest ideas to you? And you see, the most organizations are addicted to all the visible metrics like the timelines, the targets, the team sizes, business revenues. But the invisible forces like trust, safety, and if you see, these are the real or the important levers that actually determines the culture. And that energetic safety of the team members that we're talking about, it is the oxygen of the performance rather than all that data and numbers and timelines that we're talking about. Now let's take a look at a research, more like an experiment that was done by Google. They did a 2 year study on a project called Project Aristotle. Simply that they want to see what is that combination of teams that make a team a successful team, a high performing team. At the end of 2 years study, they realized that number one factor that made teams successful was their psychological safety. Now, what is psychological safety? It is not a corporate buzzword. It is that felt sense that I can be here. I can disagree. I can speak up. I can fail. I can call out my mistakes myself. And after all of this, I won't be punished at all. And what kind of a safety sense would prevail in such a team, right? And this particular team is one which has that psychological safety, and the teams that has psychological safety are the ones who are all pretty high performing. And here's what's wild. Psychological safety isn't created by the systems, it's created by people. And more specifically, it is created by the leader's energy, not the policy, not the motivational quotes which is written on the walls of the organizations, but they show up in micro moments by the leader. When somebody stumbles in a meeting, what happens? When a conflict brews between two team members, how is it handled? When a feedback needs to be given, very uncomfortable feedback, how is it being given? And in those moments, the question isn't is, did I say the right thing as a leader? But the most important question here is, did people feel safe after the conversation with the leader? Because safety is felt. And it's not, again, the numbers, the timelines that we're talking about. It's the feeling of being safe, is what we're talking about. So now, if we were to flip leadership on its head, instead of asking, how can I influence people? We need to ask ourselves, how do I make my people feel safe to show themselves as fully as they could? And this particular question of influencing to feeling, making them feel safe, this particular question isn't soft, isn't vague, but here is a strategy which is very deep. Because when people feel safe, they speak up with courage, they disagree with respect. A lot of healthy conflict happens is where the innovations happens, the technological disruptions happen, and they think beyond what is a normal. And that's when they step in into a higher performance game or being that high performing teams. And that's exactly where the real ROI lives. Not in the timelines, not in the data, not in the business revenue, but the real ROI lies with the team who feels safe. And that's what we call it as the psychological safety. Now let's take a pause and reflect on a radical truth. You may be the most important variable in the emotional climate of your team. I'll repeat that. The leader is the most important variable in the emotional climate of your team. Not because of your title, being the manager, being the director, because of your salary as well, and not even your years of experience, but truly in the leadership energy, which is built moment by moment. Now that we've surfaced the missing KPIs and the ROI that we explored, let's also explore the ripple effect of it. Let's dive into the next topic of that safety ripple effect. How one leader's energy multiplies across culture. And this particular leader's energy, when it gets multiplied, is when the culture is born. One person's energy can become everyone else's emotional reality. And that person is a leader. So let me ask you something. Have you ever walked into a meeting and you knew that something was really off? No one said anything wrong, no one disagreed, no one even acknowledged it, but you could feel it like that hum in the air, and everybody else could also feel it. And that hum in the air that you could feel is called that energy field at work. In every team, there is an invisible ecosystem, and that leader. And what happens to that leader in that invisible ecosystem? He's the thermostat. They don't measure just that temperature, The leaders actually set that temperature in that invisible ecosystem which is running. And this is very important for all the leaders to understand that they are being that thermostat in that emotional or invisible ecosystem that the entire team is carrying. So it's up to you to set what kind of a temperature that you would like to set for your team. Now let's break this down. 2023 Harvard Business Review study found that an employee's emotional state tend to mirror that of the manager's tone. And all of this happens within 90 seconds of a meeting. Can you believe? 1.5 minutes. And 1.5 minutes is all it takes for the employees to start mirroring and adapting to the manager's tone. And that's quite just enough to say, hi, good morning. What's going on with this delay? It's just that amount of time, right? A very brief amount of time. And that's all it takes for the team to start mirroring to the emotional state of the leader. And that's that emotional contagion that we all have heard in the neuroscience. Our brains are mirrored with the mirror neurons, which means your team doesn't just hear you, they feel you and they absorb you. So when a leader is grounded, is calm, is curious, the room follows the same thing. On the other hand, when the leader walks in with a lot of urgency, judgment, passive aggression, sarcasm, what really happens? The team shrinks. The team second guesses before they even start talking anything. And they start performing really safe. And safe is the opposite of smart, isn't it? So here's a quote that stays with me. Leaders' unresolved energy becomes a team's operating anxiety. The leader's unresolved energy becomes the team's operational anxiety. Now, think about this for a second. Anything that the leader does is mirrored by the team members. The sigh you let out when you're reviewing a report, the tight tone during your team check in, or that micro eye roll when someone disagrees. And what happens is that this energy travels in the entire room in the meeting. And the impact? People don't pitch their boldest ideas. Meetings becomes more political and not creative. Feedbacks becomes feels unsafe, and eventually the performance dips. And not because your team lacks the skill, but because your team lacks the safety. And it is very difficult when a team which is more skilled, but they don't have that safety to perform well, the performance dips. Now, here's a empowering part for all the leaders. It doesn't need years and years of therapy or years and years of training to shift this. All it takes is awareness and intention. It is that simple to change from where we are as a leader to become that energy aware leader. Because energy is like that culture. You either you are actively shaping it or you are leaking it. But the constant truth is that every leader creates a ripple effect. And the question is your energy creating ripples of safety or ripples of stress? And that's the decision that all of us should be taking. So if you're a founder, a manager, a team lead, or you just manage tasks, you need to understand that you're not just managing tasks or people, you actually manage the emotional climate where those tasks can happen. And that is a true leadership of bringing that safety environment for people to thrive, to be speaking up really loud. So now let's move forward because it's not just about how we show up, it is also about how people experience us when they need to bring the truth to the table. So now let's also explore the micro moments of trust where the safety is either built or it is broken. It's a two-way street. Here's something you won't really be finding in the leadership handbooks. What's important is that the trust isn't built in the big moments. Trust is built in micro moments. It's built in the tiny, unscripted ones. And in those fleeting seconds, people are scanning just one thing. And constantly they are scanning the leader for one thing. Am I safe here with this leader? Am I comfortable with this leader being around? Now imagine this. A team member shares a vulnerable idea during a meeting. It's not polished, it is just being raw. And the leader instinctively says, "Hey, we have tried this before, it didn't work." And that moment, that tiny moment, is gone in 3 seconds, isn't it? But to the person who spoke, who shared the idea, he saved in his brain this whole experience as a file named "Don't Speak Up Again." Now, let's imagine the same moment, but a different thing which has happened. Let's say somebody shares a messy idea, and this time you say, "Hey, that's an angle we haven't explored in a while. Can you please expand that?" Same 3 seconds. But now the file that gets saved is that my voice matters. And do you see? 3 seconds. 3 seconds, it's all it takes, and few words for a person to be imprinting what it feels for him just with the 3 seconds words that is being spoken by the leader. And these are the micro moments. And micro moments matter because the brain doesn't wait for too long to be making that file and putting an entry in the brain. According to Dr. Amy Edmondson, a Harvard researcher, she's also a pioneer of psychological safety. She, you know what she talks about the psychological safety? She says your team's nervous system are constantly on alert for threat or trust. There's only two emotional states or psychological states that constantly is on alert for a team member. And guess what? A tone shift, a distracted glance where you take away your eye contact from someone, or just a sigh can trigger the same flight or fight or even freeze response as you see a lion in the jungle. We don't only create our threat alert system only when we see a lion. Those tiny 3 seconds, the words that is spoken by the leader always triggers either two alert system. It could be either the trust or the threat. And what is how does the brain of the team member react? It will trigger them fight, flight, or a freeze response. Why? Because of social safety. They want to survive. And your leadership isn't judged by what you intend to speak. It is merely judged by people how they experience it moment by moment. And that's how cultures are built. And the truth is, you don't build trust in town halls. You build it in the pause that you give before you interrupt, the patience, your active listening when you give it to somebody else, your grace when somebody admits their mistakes, the way you respond to a disagreement. And these are the trust cues in the minds of your team members. They're either opening up communication or they're silently shutting it down. And it all depends on the leader. Now, here's a powerful reframe. Every moment you lead is an energetic transaction which is constantly happening with your team members. You're either depositing safety or withdrawing from it. And I used to always talk to the leaders that I coach to always imagine a piggy bank right in front of them, a conversational piggy bank. And I tell them every time you'll have to strike a conversation with your team members. Now imagine this invisible conversational bank. And at the end of your conversation, ask yourself, am I withdrawing money from it or am I remitting money into it? If you've had a very good conversation, if you've kept your team vibrant after your conversation, then you're making an input into your conversational bank. If you're going to ruffle the emotions of your team and create that threat response in them, then you are withdrawing. So, at the end of every day, you look at how much savings that you have had in your conversational bank. The best leaders, they don't wait for those team building retreats, but the best leaders are the one who build trust every single day through attention, through their tone, through their presence. And they are the ones who has a huge volume piggy bank. Now let's take this further. If trust is built in micro moments, where does these micro moments happen the most? In feedbacks, in performance reviews, in conflict? That's exactly where the energy safety is either amplified or it is eroded. It's only two sides of the coin, right? So the next segment we will move on is to talk about that feedback karma. Why the energy behind the correction, the feedback, matters more than the correction in itself. The energy behind the correction or the feedback matters more than the feedback, what you wanted to correct in itself. Now, let me ask you this. Have you ever received a constructive feedback? They call it constructive feedback, but you felt crushed from inside. Or even worse, confused? Now, here's the paradox. Feedback is meant to build, but sometimes what happens is that it breaks. And the difference is not lying in what is being said. The difference is lying in the energy behind how it is being said. Now, I will back this up with science. Studies show that employees who receive meaningful feedback are 4.6 times more likely to be engaged at work, roughly about 5%, 5 times. So, what really means is that just by giving meaningful feedback as a leader, you can improve your engagement rate at work by 5 times. That's a huge number, isn't it? But here's the twist. If the feedback is delivered without that psychological safety, it doesn't work. It goes in the opposite direction. Even the most well intended feedback, the most nicely spoken with words feedback creates the trigger of the threat response in the brain. And what happens afterwards? Afterwards, freeze, flight, or fight response. And that's not the state that we put our teams into. Their bodies literally respond to how they are being attacked by like the lion. Have you seen the team member sitting opposite? Their heart rate rises, their cortisol floods in the system. They sweat a lot. They sit with their clenched jaws. That means they are not in that thriving mode. They are right now in the survival mode because they have activated their threat response. And over time, this becomes a culture that everybody carries. They don't feel safe with the leader. They don't feel nice to talk to them. They silently come into the office, silently go. And one point, there's also this quiet quitting which happens. And this is why I call it the feedback karma. Because the energy behind your correction, your tone, your presence, your energy, you you leave residue with your communication, and that residue determines what they remember afterwards. Not the advice, not the rating, but how you made them feel. I'll give you two examples right now. Let's talk about manager A. Manager A says, I need you to step up. What you did was utterly disappointing. Flat tone, no context, ends the conversation with these two statements. Now let's look at manager B. Hey, you've done a great job in the past. Let's figure out what got in the way this time. I believe in your potential. What really happened? Both manager A and manager B are giving the same feedback, but only one, which is manager B, who creates a future with their team member. And that is called an feedback energy, which is that energetic intention. It's not about how are you correcting them with punish, with control, with showing them your superiority, or you're correcting them with uplifting them, aligning them, helping them win. And the difference between them is not the correction, but the connection. The connection with which the energy is established between the leader and the team member. And here's the magic, when your feedback feels safe, you're not just developing better performers, but you're building braver humans. People who can receive feedback without fear and even ask for it. That's a culture shift. So, as you lead, pause before you speak and ask yourselves, am I connecting to correcting or giving a feedback to connect, or am I giving a feedback to control my team members? And the answer to this question will shape how you as a leader will show up in a feedback session. And that is your karma as a leader. Now let's move ahead and talk about the culture equation, why the energy between people shapes the systems. And that's exactly what happens. The energy between people is what shapes the system. Now let's zoom out for a moment and talk about culture. Now, culture. Culture is like a very big word. We throw it around like that leadership terms like confetti. But what is the essential sense of culture is that we need culture for everything that happens in an organization. We need culture for innovation. We need culture to build accountability. We need culture to drive performance. But what exactly is this culture? It's not the vision statement of your organization. It is not the perks and recognition that we offer to the team. Culture is the energy that lives in the space between two people. It is that look that gets exchanged in the hallway. It is that silence that lives in the meeting. It is how people react when somebody talks really bold. That's where the culture lives. Now, here's the powerful truth, your organization's culture is not what you say it is what people feel when you walk out of the room. And the leaders set the tone to the culture quite literally. Research by Harvard Business Review shows that 70 percentage of the variance in a team engagement is attributable to the manager's behavior. It's 70% of the manager's behavior is what brings that equation of the team culture. Not the budget, not the org chart, not the tools, not the rewards and recognitions. It's purely you as a leader. Here's what happens energetically. When a leader is grounded, present, open, and people breathe easier around him, people feel very safe, is when they relax into their ideas. They are more likely to collaborate. They trust the process of the whole team, and the performance is really good. But when the leader carries tension, urgency, judgment, sarcasm, and the energy spreads like a static, suddenly people edit, create filters in their mind, withhold, play it safe. All of that happens. And this is why I say leaders are not just the culture creators, they are the culture conductors. The same way a conductor shapes the emotion of their entire orchestra, the leader shapes the emotional tone of the entire teams. So it's entirely up to you. If you want to create that high trust, high performance culture, you must start with energy hygiene. Do I speak from stress or speak from vision? Do I create space or I demand control, obedience from my team? Because every meeting, every message, every minute, you're transmitting something really powerfully. And the only question is, are you aware of what you're transmitting? Because here is the culture equation. Words plus energy is equal to culture. And you can't change culture without shifting energy. And you can't shift energy until you take the complete responsibility of what you bring yourself into the room. Now, one more thing which is important is that legacy energy as leaders that we are bringing into the team. What people say when you're not in the room. Let's talk about something very few people stop to ask themselves or even to their team members. What is it like to experience me when I'm not around? Sounds like a paradox, right? But your energy leaves a footprint even after that meeting is done. You've signed off a call, you've finished a meeting. In fact, what neuroscience says is that emotionally charged moments, especially those tied to psychological safety, is what gets stored in your amygdala, a part of your brain, which happens to process a lot of your emotions. And that means your people remember how you made them feel long before they can even recall what you said. And whatever gets stored in that amygdala, the part of the brain, has more time. It gets saved for a longer time than the other parts of the brain. And that is the legacy energy. It is the vibe that lingers even after you're gone. It is that whisper that happens even behind the closed doors. And they matter more than the titles. And once again, what Harvard Business Review speaks about the organizational trust is that between the high trust companies and the ones which are the low trust organizations, the difference of the total return is 286 percentage. That's like 300% difference. And that's a game changer. Trust. Why? Because trust drives performance, and trust isn't built by charisma, it is built by the consistency of the leader. So your legacy isn't just about that strategy that you leave behind, but it is that emotional climate you cultivate in the nervous systems of your people. And that's exactly why we spoke about the emotional ecosystem of the team. And we are the thermostat as leaders. It's left to us onto what is the temperature that we want to set. So let's remember that the legacy isn't built in big dramatic moments, it is built in micro behaviors and micro moments. How do we handle stress? How do we show up in meetings? How do we respond to our people? Because leadership presence isn't about the presence alone, it is about what our presence leaves behind. And energetic safety creates that legacy energy of our leadership. And that's the invisible inheritance we leave after every meeting, after every conversations that happen. And let's also remember that there is a new KPI now added to all of our dashboards, that energetic safety of the team. And that is what matters in building our teams, not just the numbers. So, as we wrap this particular session, I just wanted to um, ask all of us to take a pause and see, how does it feel for people to be led by me? What is it like to experience me when I'm not around? And understand that the legacy that we leave behind is the energy footprint, the emotional aftertaste that we leave with people. And let's remember all the neurosciences and the statistics that we spoke today, that emotionally charged moments are the ones that get saved in all of our minds. So, energetic safety is the hidden KPI for great leadership, not because it feels really good, but simply because it creates cultures that works for all of us. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Kavina. You really covered it so well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Shabana.
Does anyone has any question? I think it was, yeah, Sneha has. Yeah.
Hi, Sneha.
Hi, good evening, Kavina. How are you?
I'm doing well, Sneha. Thanks for asking. How are you?
I'm good. Kavina
Love.
ma'am, I would like to ask something. I would like to share something with you. You know,
Sure.
once I heard from a leader that one of the employees made a mistake. You know, he or she made a mistake, and it was a big blunder, which could have cost the organization a lot of money to rectify or do something. But the leader was so responsible and he built such a beautiful footprint in front of me that I always remember this. He said,
Lovely.
people who work does make a mistake because people who are not working will never make a mistake. Who shows up that they are working but they are not working will not make a mistake. But the ones who are actually doing something or experimenting with their careers or doing something or giving an output are bent to make a mistake. So this was
Absolutely.
very beautiful thing which just registered in my mind.
Lovely, Sneha. Thanks for sharing. In fact, in one of the biggest network of hospitals, what they found out through the data, through their years of the data that they have stored, they've realized that the maximum number of mistakes, the higher number of mistakes, are always made by the group of doctors, highly valued doctors in their organization. And this particular data was something which everybody was thinking, how could this happen? They are like the most skilled and the cream of doctors who are there. But how come they are the ones who make the most mistakes? And
Hmm.
this actually triggered the research in that hospital, in the valuable hospital. They've come to understand that there's so much of psychological safety and trust in that particular team, the group of doctors who were openly able to admit that I've made mistake, compared to the others who still made mistakes, probably bigger number, but they didn't want to admit it. So this goes on to talk that the psychological safety that we're talking about, the trust in which we are talking about, they are the ones who can speak that they have made mistakes, and mistakes are the new pathway for new future. And that's where the disruptions happens. innovations flows, creativity comes in, perfection comes over time, right? So thanks for sharing. I could relate it to the research that I read, and I was also shocked to see that data which came up. Thanks, Neha.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for the beautiful session, and thank you so much for sharing your learnings. It means a
Thank you
lot.
very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Kavina,
Hi, Rajman.
Shabana, what can I say? I'm doing tips for joyful living in Johor Bahru, second Malaysia World Laughter Yoga Conference, which is starting 24th to 27th July.
Lovely, lovely. We're
And
celebrating you.
and and what can I say? All that you gave, all that you gave in this session, I was listening. My hypnotherapist was in hospital today, and I received all the negative comments from my caregiver's niece, and my nephew hacked my phone and all that. But I'm still doing, and my meditation teacher said, "Wow, you are going for 300 delegates from 21 countries. Wow." He gave me a
Wonderful.
he gave me a and then my all my things are working well, and everything is working well. So I don't know why people must make comments like, I'm naughty and everything. Even in the even in the organization, the person who disturbed me and my founder Menika Devi Raja Manikam, and my co-host Warren Key, she's still disturbing us, and Subhashini, she's still disturbing us. But I told her off that uh, I'm gonna go for conference, and please don't disturb me.
Good thing that you did. Move
So
forward. I'm so happy that you've got this opportunity, Rajvin. I'm sure you would do this absolutely the best.
yeah,
Yes, of course, there's a
so
lot of things which happens around, and I want you to step in the most powerful self that you can actually be stepping
no,
in.
I actually going through, but I actually going through burn injury also because of my hot pot touch my hand.
Mhm.
So because of my stupidity of mine, sorry to use that word, but I'm really, really frustrated with my nephews. They really, really, they really, 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 they shouldn't intrude my privacy until I burn my arm. So yeah, I am going to Johor Bahru tomorrow, and I will be only for this from this platform. But I will be logging in whenever I can, whether Saturday or Sunday, or watch the recording, or I will see you guys on Monday. So thank you, Shabana. It was really good. So I hope to share insights with you after I come back from the conference. God bless you,
Sure,
Shabana.
Rajvin.
All the
All the
speakers
best,
here,
Rajvin.
and all the
So happy.
speakers here, on all the speakers here and audience here, they have given me
All the best, Rajvin. All the best. Do
mental,
well.
mental, mental energy.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you,
I,
Rajvin. And thank you so much, Kavina, for sharing. It was really wonderful. And looking forward to see you all again tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Shabana
you.
ma'am. Thank you, Kavina. Bye
thank you,
bye.
Bye.
Good
Shabana.
night.
Bye bye.